Hello everyone and welcome to a new video of your Polyglot Academy. Now in this new video I'm going to continue the series on how to learn German up to a B1 level with 1,000 words, and today I'm going to continue with lesson number 7, so basically the words from 601 to 700. So let's start. Now the first one is going to be das Atom, which means atom. Here's an example. Alles besteht aus Atomen. Everything is made of atoms. Following on we have erwarten, which means to expect. Wir erwarten Gäste am Abend. We expect guests in the evening. Now we have der Knochen, which means bone. Der Hund knabbert an einem Knochen. The dog chews on a bone. Following on we have vorstellen, which means to imagine or to introduce. Here's an example. Kannst du dir das vorstellen? Can you imagine that? Bieten, which means to provide or to offer. Wir bieten viele Möglichkeiten. We provide many opportunities. Now we have zustimmen, which means to agree. Ich stimme deinem Vorschlag zu. I agree with your suggestion. Now we have so, which means thus or so in this case. Es war kalt, so blieb ich zu Hause. It was cold, thus or so I stayed at home. Following on we have sanft, which means gentle. Der Wind war sanft. The wind was gentle. Now we have die Frau, which means the woman. Die Frau liest ein Buch. The woman is reading a book. Now we have erraten, which means to guess. Kannst du die Antwort erraten? Can you guess the answer? Erforderlich means necessary. Ein Pass ist erforderlich. A passport is necessary. Now we have scharf, which means sharp or spicy. Das Messer ist scharf. The knife is sharp. Now we have die Flügel, which means wing. Der Vogel breitet seine Flügel aus. A bird spreads its wings. Now we have schaffen, which means to create or to manage. Will ein Kunstwerk schaffen. He wants to create a work of art. Now we have der Nachbar, which means neighbor. Mein Nachbar ist freundlich. My neighbor is friendly. Now word 616 we have waschen, which means to wash. Ich muss meine Hände waschen. I need to wash my hands, or I must wash my hands. Now we have eher, which means rather. Ich gehe eher ins Kino als ins Theater. I'd rather go to the cinema than the theater. Next up, we have der Mais, which means corn. Der Mais wächst auf dem Feld. The corn grows in the field. Now we have vergleichen, which means to compare. Wir vergleichen die Preise. We compare the prices. Das Gedicht means the poem. Sie liest ein Gedicht. She reads a poem. Now we have abhängen, which means to depend. Alles wird von dir abhängen. Everything will depend on you. Now we have das Fleisch, which means meat. Isst kein Fleisch. He doesn't eat meat. Berühmt is the next word, which means famous. Ist ein berühmter Sänger. He's a famous singer. Now we have der Strom, which means steam or current, depending on the situation. Der Strom ist gefährlich. The current is dangerous. Now we got die Angst, which means fear. Sie hat Angst vor Spinnen. She has a fear of spiders. Next up we have dünn, which means thin. Das Papier ist dünn. The paper is thin. Now we have das Dreieck, which means triangle. Ein Dreieck hat 3 Seiten. A triangle has 3 sides. Now we have Eile, which means hurry. Ist in großer Eile. He is in a great hurry. Next up we have der Chef, which means chief or boss. Mein Chef ist streng. My boss is strict. Next up, die Kolonie, which means colony. Die Ameisen bilden eine Kolonie. The ants form a colony. Die Uhr is the next word, which means clock. Die Uhr zeigt 3 Uhr. The clock shows 3 o'clock. Now we have die Mine, which means mine. Die Mine produziert Kohle. The mine produces coal. Next up, die Krawatte, which means tie. Trägt eine blaue Krawatte. He wears a blue tie. Eingeben, which means to enter input in this case. Bitte geben Sie das Passwort ein. Please enter the password. Now we have frisch, which means fresh. Das Brot ist frisch. The bread is fresh. Die Suche, which means the search from the verb suchen, to search. Die Suche war erfolgreich. The search was successful. Now we got senden, which means to send. Sie senden einen Brief. They send a letter. Gelb, which means yellow, is the next word. Die Blume ist gelb. The flower is yellow. Next up, die Pistole, which means gun. Der Polizist trägt eine Pistole. The policeman carries a gun. Now we have erlauben, which means to allow. Sie erlauben das Rauchen nicht. They do not allow smoking. Tot is the next word, which means dead. Der Baum ist tot. The tree is dead. Now we have die Stelle, which means spot or place. Hier ist die richtige Stelle. Here is the right spot. Now we have die Wüste, which means desert. Die Wüste ist sehr trocken. The desert is very dry. Der Anzug is the next word and it means suit. Er trägt einen schwarzen Anzug. He wears a black suit. Now we have der Aufzug, which means lift or elevator. Der Aufzug ist kaputt. The lift is broken. Ankommen means to arrive. Der Zug wird bald ankommen. The train will arrive soon. Now we have die Spur, which means track. Der Hund folgte der Spur. The dog followed the track. Now we have das Blatt, which means sheet or leaf. Ein Blatt Papier liegt auf dem Tisch. A sheet of paper lies on the table. Now we have die Substanz, which means substance. Wasser ist eine lebenswichtige Substanz. Water is an essential substance. Now we have begünstigen, a very good word, which means to favor. Das Gesetz begünstigt kleine Unternehmen. The law favors small businesses. Now we have verbinden, which means to connect. Die Brücke verbindet die beiden Städte. The bridge connects the two cities. Verbringen now, which means to spend time. Sie verbringen den Sommer in Italien. They spend time, or the summer in this case, in Italy. Fett means fat. Er ist ehrlich viel zu fett. He's honestly way too fat. Froh, which means glad. Ich bin froh, dich zu sehen. I'm glad to see you. Original, which means original. Sind deine Klamotten original? Are your clothes original? Now we got die Aktie, which means share or stock. Die Aktie stieg im Wert. The share rose in value. Now we have die Haltestelle, which means the station. Wir steigen an der nächsten Haltestelle aus. We get off at the next station. Now we have das Brot, which means bread. Ich kaufe frisches Brot beim Bäcker. I buy fresh bread at the bakery. Now we have aufladen, which means to charge. Ich muss mein Handy aufladen. I need to charge my phone. Das Angebot is the next word, which means offer. Das Angebot gilt nur bis morgen. The offer is valid only until tomorrow. Now we have der Sklave, which means slave. Die Geschichte kennt viele Sklavenaufstände. History knows many slave uprisings. Now we have der Augenblick, which means instant or moment. Einen Augenblick bitte. Just a moment, please. Der Markt is the next one, which means market. Wir gehen morgen auf den Markt. We're going to the market tomorrow. Now we have der Grad, which means degree. Es sind heute 30 Grad. It is 30 degrees today. Now we have der Feind, which means enemy. Der Feind griff in der Nacht an. The enemy attacked at night. Now we have antworten, which means to reply. Kannst du bitte auf die E-Mail antworten? Can you please reply to the email? Now we have das Getränk, which means the drink. Welches Getränk möchtest du? Which drink would you like? Now we have auftreten, which means to occur or to appear. Das Problem kann jederzeit auftreten. The problem can occur at any time. Now we have die Unterstützung, which means support, from the verb unterstützen, which means to support. Vielen Dank für deine Unterstützung. Thank you for your support. Die Rede, which means speech. Der Politiker hielt eine lange Rede. The politician gave a long speech. Now we have die Natur, which means nature. Die Natur ist wunderschön. Nature is beautiful. Die Bewegung, which means motion or movement. Die Bewegung der Erde verursacht Tag und Nacht. The motion of the earth causes day and night. Der Dampf, which means steam. Der Dampf steigt aus dem Kochtopf. The steam rises from the pot. Now we have die Flüssigkeit, which means liquid, from the adjective flüssig, which means liquid. Wasser ist eine Flüssigkeit. Water is a liquid. Now we have protokollieren, which means to log. Wir müssen die Daten genau protokollieren. We need to log the data precisely. Now we have der Hals, which means neck. Er trägt ein Tuch um den Hals. He wears a scarf around his neck. Next up, der Sauerstoff, which means oxygen. Ohne Sauerstoff können wir nicht leben. We cannot live without oxygen. Next up, der Zucker, which means sugar. Tee ohne Zucker schmeckt mir besser. I prefer tea without sugar. Now we have ziemlich, which means pretty or quite. Es ist heute ziemlich kalt. It is pretty cold today. Now we have die Lösung, which means solution. Wir müssen eine Lösung finden. We need to find a solution. Das Magnet is the next one, which means magnet. Ein Magnet zieht Metall an. A magnet attracts metal. Next up, we have danken, which means to thank. Ich möchte dir herzlich danken. I want to thank you sincerely. Now we have der Silber, which means silver. Der Ring ist aus Silber. The ring is made of silver. Now we have insbesondere, which means especially. Ich mag Sport, insbesondere Fußball. I like sports, especially football. Now we have ängstlich, which means afraid or anxious, and here's an example. Das Kind war ängstlich im Dunkeln. The child was afraid in the dark. Now we have riesig, which means huge, and here's an example. Der Elefant ist ein riesiges Tier. The elephant is a huge animal. Now we have die Schwester, which means sister. Meine Schwester ist jünger als ich. My sister is younger than me. Now we have diskutieren, which means to discuss. Wir diskutieren das Problem in der Klasse. We discuss the problem in the class. Now we have vorwärts, which means forward, and here's an example. Bitte geh einen Schritt vorwärts. Please take a step forward. Now we have führen, which means to guide or to lead. Der Lehrer führt die Schüler durch das Museum. The teacher guides the students through the museum. Die Erfahrung is the next word, which means experience. Reisen bringt viel Erfahrung. Traveling brings a lot of experience. Now we have der Apfel, which means apple. Der Apfel ist rot und süß. The apple is red and sweet. And talking about sweet things, next up we have süß, which means sweet. Zucker ist allgemein sehr süß. Sugar is normally very sweet. Next up we have der Mantel, which means coat. Im Winter trage ich einen dicken Mantel. I wear a thick coat in winter. Now we have die Masse, which means mass. Die Masse der Erde ist sehr groß. Mass of the earth is very large. Next up, we have das Seil, which means the rope. Das Seil ist stark und lang. The rope is strong and long. Now we have gewinnen, which means to win. Wir wollen das Spiel gewinnen. We want to win the game. Now we have träumen, which means to dream. Ich möchte heute Nacht schön träumen. I want to dream nicely tonight. Now word 699, we have der Abend, which means evening. Am Abend gehen wir spazieren. In the evening we go for a walk. And now finally, the last word, das Werkzeug, which means the tool. Für die Reparatur brauche ich ein Werkzeug. I need a tool for the repair. And that is the last word for today's video. Now, if you have any questions whatsoever, any wishes, then just make sure to leave a comment down below. And other than that, if you enjoyed the video, like the video, subscribe to the channel. And other than that, thanks for watching. Have a nice day and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.